Help support AMTV by becoming a patron, an AMTV staff member, and following us over on Twitter. Hi there guys, it's Adam Martyn here, and welcome back to another video. And first things first, yes, I've had a shave, a complete shave. This is for an acting role, and yes, I'm very aware I look about 10 years younger. Let's move on. So today we're going to be talking about the Centenary Special that's coming up in Doctor Who, which now has a title. It is known as The Power of the Doctor. And you know, several people have issued their thoughts on that title. Some people love it, some people absolutely despise it, some people think it's cringe, some people think it's epic. Like with most things in the Doctor Who fandom, you really get the broad sense of opinion. Obviously for me, my first thought was it reminded me of The Power of the Daleks, which was the very first Second Doctor story back in 1966. But I actually, the more I've got used to it, I think at first I was a bit like, oh, that wasn't what I was expecting. But the more I've heard it, the more I've got used to it, because, you know, I think that's very symbolic of the Doctor as a character. You could take that to mean several things, like their general power or the power of the character, on a wider sense, the impact it's had on people who've watched or in the universe of Doctor Who. I'm warming to it more. The more I'm hearing it, the more I'm warming to it. I do wonder if it's going to be one of those cases where, you know, in any TV show where they have an episode and you think, are they going to say the name of the episode somehow in the script? So I wonder if we're going to get one of the characters saying, like, this is the power of the Doctor or something like that. That'd be interesting. But at the time I'm recording this, we're just about to get into October, so it's still some time away. We haven't, at the time of this recording, we haven't had a confirmed release date. Some people are saying they've heard it might be Sunday the 23rd of October, because that is that week leading up to it, I think, is the anniversary week of the BBC itself, their 100th anniversary. So I guess that makes a lot of sense to put it there. But yeah, at the time of this recording, we don't have a confirmed release date, but it's most likely looking like it's going to be Sunday the 23rd of October. And this special, honestly, this has a lot to live up to, because, I mean, we've all seen the trailer for it by now at the end of Legend of the Sea Devils. There's a lot this special wants to do in a very short time. I think we've had basically near confirmation that the special is 90 minutes long, so an hour and a half, so that's a pretty good length, and it's actually, I think, one of the longest, like, televised episodes of Doctor Who ever, on par with, like, the TV movie, because even Day of the Doctor, the 50th anniversary, that was, what, an hour and 15, about 75 minutes? So it's certainly one of the longer ones, but we've got a lot. We've got returning monsters, we've got returning companions, we've got the current companions we've got to see. We've got to see the Doctor and Yaz, the Doctor's regeneration, how's the Master back? You know, there's so many questions. So what I thought I'd do is I'd just go through a few points of what we've got and give my thoughts on it. So first of all, I just wanted to touch on the previous specials we've had in Series 13. So I'm specifically talking about Eve of the Daleks and The Legend of the Sea Devils. Now, I've always felt these two, I've done reviews on them both, by the way, which you can check out, give my thoughts on that. But I've always felt these two were quite, what's the word? They were quite low-key, if that makes sense. Like, Eve of the Daleks in particular was like a very singular episode, you know, set in one location. It felt very small-scale, which isn't a bad thing. I think that some of the best Doctor Who is small-scale Doctor Who. And I really liked some of the characterizations, the Daleks themselves. You know, there was a lot to like. I really liked it. Legend of the Sea Devils I didn't like as much. And again, I've done a review on that, which you can go and check out. There were some things, you know, it felt a bit rushed. There were elements that they didn't feel necessarily cohesive. Some continuity things here and there, you know. And I think the fandom, a lot of the fandom reacted that way as well. They thought, it's not, maybe not the return we were hoping for the Sea Devils. But again, it's all subjective. Some people loved it, and that's absolutely cool, by the way. These are just my thoughts. But I was buzzed to see the Sea Devils back. They look great. But yeah, maybe not the kind of follow-up I was hoping for to Eve of the Daleks. But this is obviously trying to pull out all the stops. So with that, what do we roughly know so far? Well, I've already mentioned all the returning things coming back. That's pretty much it. You know, they've been, as this era has been, they've been pretty tight-lipped since that trailer. We have had a few interviews, like in Doctor Who magazine. They recently did an interview with Sacha Dhawan, who of course plays the Master. But that mainly talks about, you know, him coming back and his love for disguise. So we're going to hopefully see the Master in some disguises. And we've had little tidbits here and there. I think Jodie recently did a short interview for, was it Empire magazine or SFX, one of those two. And again, you know, just sort of saying this is a big moment. It's her regeneration story. This one's for the Whovians, I believe she's been quoted as saying. So, you know, not much necessarily new information about the story. The returning monsters, let's touch on them first. So, in the trailer, we got glimpses. We saw Daleks, we saw Cybermen, and particularly we saw Ashad, the lone Cyberman. Now, of course, if you remember from The Timeless Children back in 2020, Ashad, the lone Cyberman, was built up as like one of the big bads, only to be shrunk by the Master and turn into a little doll. So, you know, but I think I even said back then, you know, that was a disappointing, at the time, end to that character. It felt like a very quick end. But, you know, this is Doctor Who. Anyone can be brought back. And I've always wondered with the Master's TCE, it's always presumed, I think, every time it's appeared that once you're shrunk, you're dead, essentially. But I think it'd be an interesting idea to play around with, no, what if the Master, in some circumstances at least, can reverse that? You know, what if they can reverse that process? But yeah, Ashad's back. Very interested to see how that plays out. And the Daleks, man, it's a weird one because obviously I love the Daleks. I think we all do as Whovians. They are the big Doctor Who monster everyone knows and loves, but they've been used a lot, not just in this era, like in the revival. And that, you know, there was always the rumor, like the Terry Nation estate, the man who wrote the Daleks, he's now no longer with us, but there was always that rumor that the estate said, all right, we'll let you use the Daleks in the revival of Doctor Who as long as they appear every single year. Now, to my knowledge, that's never even been fully confirmed. That has always just been one of those like long time fan rumors, but it certainly feels like it some years. And yeah, I personally feel the returning monsters, maybe put Ashad to one side, but the returning monsters like the Cybermen and the Daleks in particular, I'd be more than happy if they were just more, I don't want to say cameo, but not as big of a role as maybe like other elements of this story, you know? And they sort of were like that in Flux as well. Like, you know, we had Daleks popping up for a little bit and Cybermen as well. But yeah, I don't want them to be the main focus of this. I really don't. And then we have the returning companions. So obviously the fandom collectively lost its mind when we learned that Sophie Aldred and Janet Fielding were coming back as Ace and Tegan, respectively. Now, I think, again, it's no understatement to say that these two weren't just some of the most popular companions of the 1980s, but they still remain some of the most popular companions in the fandom in general. I mean, for Tegan at the time, people say, yeah, she complained a lot, but I think it was a nice breakaway from, you know, she wasn't, as Janet Fielding herself has said, Tegan isn't dumb. She's not, you know, unintelligent. She was just in a very frustrated position of wanting to get home. And I think it was a breath of fresh air at that time in Doctor Who. And then with Ace, obviously I had this young, streetwise character who, again, at the time in the late 80s was nothing like Doctor Who had ever had before. And she's had a lot of expansion in the expanded media, you know, lots of Big Finish, a lot of development in various books and spin-offs, as has Tegan too. I always wonder, bringing back classic companions, how much of that expansion is going to be like included in the story, if you get me. Like, you know, Tegan and Ace have done so much. I think Ace in particular, if you look at the expanded universe, like the Virgin New Adventures and Big Finish, but how much of that is going to be incorporated into this? Because, of course, these two actors are naturally older. It's been 30 and 40 years, and they are seemingly are playing these characters in these older states. So they even say in the trailer it's been 30 or 40 years since I've last seen the Doctor. So, yeah, timeline-wise, you might have to use your imagination a bit. Of course, with a universe as large as Doctor Who, there's always going to be crossovers or contradictions. So we'll let it slide. We'll let it slide. But really, I hope these guys are going to be one of the main focuses. And in fact, in interviews, again, given in Doctor Who magazine, Sophie Aldred, I think, actually said, oh, when I got given the call about do you want to be in Doctor Who again, I thought it was just going to be a cameo. But no, she says that's not part of the script she read. So I really hope right from the get-go, Tegan and Ace are like thrust back into the middle of it. They have a main part alongside the current companions, so Yaz and Dan, that they're really front and center, because I think that'd be fantastic. A really good showcase for their characters as well. But I also hope that some of that development, even if it's subtle, is included. You know, I wouldn't want it just to be, oh, we're returning and nothing's ever happened. You know, you don't have to go full in with it because that's so much to delve into, but I'd want at least some of that development they've had as characters over the last 30, 40 years incorporated into their return here. We've also got Kate Stewart and Unit returning. Now, I've always liked Unit and Kate Stewart in particular. The Third Doctor's era, you know, the Unit heyday is one of my favourite periods of Doctor Who of all time. And Kate Stewart, I think, is a character I've always really, like, warmed to. Maybe not at first when she appeared in the Matt Smith era, but when she appeared more in, like, Capaldi's time, I really got to grips with the character. And again, hearing what they've done with her in Big Finish and stuff like that. So, really happy to see her. We obviously saw her in Flux as well. She didn't necessarily have that much to do, but she had some great scenes. Like, I always remember that scene in the office with Kate and the Grand Serpent. Really strong stuff, really strong acting from the pair of them. Really like that there. But again, I just hope, with so much going on, I hope that Unit and Kate Stewart do have a sizable focus. Some people might not want that. Some people might be, I don't know, they might not want that particular character to have it, or Unit in general. But I'd be all for that, personally. Moving on quickly to the current companions, one character I'm interested to see bow out is Dan, because John Bishop has of course confirmed that this will be his last one, he's not carrying on into the new era, so I'm really interested to see how they write him out, and I kind of want, because we've had this trend, haven't we, where a lot of companions either die or something horrific happens to them. That's why when Graham and Ryan left at the end of Revolution of the Daleks, I found that such a breath of fresh air, like that they just decided to go, because I think we haven't had that properly since Martha back in 2007. So yeah, I'm still, I don't want Dan to be killed off, really. I just want him to go quietly, in the sense of it's not this big epic thing. Maybe finally is able to make it work with Diane, who's like his potential love interest back home in Liverpool. Yeah, I just want him to get a nice little send off, really. And yeah, I think that would fit the character as well. Then, of course, you have the Doctor and Yaz. Now, the whole Phasmin thing has been built up, and it's happening. It seems to be happening, which I'm all for. We got hints of it in Eve of the Daleks, and Flux as well, to be fair. And we also got it more in Legend of the Sea Devils, which I really loved. That last scene on the beach in particular, I thought was really cool. It really explored, I guess, the Doctor's psyche as to how much she wants to let in, like, those sorts of relationships again. And I'm not saying there has to be a kiss in this one, right? I know we all want it. We all want to see it, especially all the Phasmin stands, the Thassies. You all want it. I get it. But even if they don't kiss, I'd be fine with that, as long as we get some sort of satisfactory conclusion to this relationship and to this arc. Because again, I think Mandip Gill has sort of confirmed or said that, she's implied that she's not carrying on into the new era either. So we're going to get Yaz and Dan bowing out. Now, of course, in terms of if Yaz gets killed off or if something horrific happens to her, that might work better only because the stakes with her and the Doctor are higher. There's, a potential there's a potential romance involved. So naturally the stakes are higher. Emotionally they're higher. And I think a lot of people have said, oh my God, what if it's the Master who does something horrific to Yaz and that's how she bows out? That idea, again, if it happens, has the potential to be very powerful television, I think, if it's done well. And I trust the actors. All the actors are on top form. But again, if the writing's there and the way it's like directed and played out, I think you could have a really unique ending. And just to touch on as well, they've hinted recently that there's going to be a big twist, and some have described it as like a Sherlock type special. Now, I'll hold my hands up. I haven't watched Sherlock. It's just not really my sort of thing. It's not against the actors or the writers. It's just not my thing. So I don't know what kind of twist they're referring to. I think from just what I've seen on Twitter and other social media, is it that Sherlock and Moriarty were implied to be brothers or closely related or something like that? The whole thing of the Doctor and the Master being siblings, that was somewhat touted way back in the 70s, but I kind of like they keep that ambiguous. They've always sort of kept it ambiguous. So, yeah, we'll have to see what that twist is. Speaking of the Master himself, again, Sacha Dhawan's coming back, which is fantastic. And even from the trailer and the promo photos, it looks like we're getting a lot of different disguises from this time. One of them looks like Rasputin. Again, I don't think that's been confirmed, but the picture looks very much like a Rasputin-style pose, so that'll be interesting for sure. And again, I love the sort of malevolence this version of the Master takes. Gives me a bit of that John Sim energy, but also sort of the classic energy as well, of like Delgado and Anthony Ainley, like the planner. Yeah, I really wonder how he's going to fit into this story. So alongside, as I mentioned, the companions, both old and new, I think the Master should be the main focus of this one, as opposed to the Daleks, as opposed to the Cybermen. It just makes more sense. The Doctor and the Master going at a big battle before one or both of them might have to regenerate. We don't know. Again, we don't know what Sacha's state is in terms of playing the Master, whether he'll carry on to do it, or if it was just for this era. Who knows? And then there's obviously the previous story threads. So, we've had the Timeless Child, mainly in like Series 12, which sort of got wrapped up and expanded in Flux, with the Watch and all that sort of stuff. But the Watch is now deep within the TARDIS. We don't know as of yet whether we're going to get, an expansion on that. All the stuff with like Tecteun's origins and things like that. again, it's all, there's so much to potentially wrap up. And again, Flux, Flux wiped out half the universe apparently. So is that fixed now? We still haven't quite addressed that. And to be honest, if anyone knows their sci-fi shows, it probably won't get addressed, and that's fine. We let it go. But yeah, I do wonder how well the different previous story threads are going to tie into this. Don't have to call it the Centenary anymore. Call it Power of the Doctor. And then I guess the last major thing, or actually penultimate last major thing I want to mention, is Jo Martin's fugitive Doctor. Now, a lot of people have really warmed to her. I think she's done a great characterization of it, even though she's not been in it for that long in terms of the TV. It would be great to see her one more time, and not just in like a very quick cameo sort of role. I'd want like at least maybe a few scenes, hopefully, just to give some closure to that character on television at the very least, because she is lined up to do a Big Finish box set sometime next year or in years to come, which is very exciting. But I just hope she gets a proper, not send-off, but just like a wrap-up, or we tie this bit in a bow while she's on television, because that would make sense with Jodie's era as well. And of course, the last major thing I wanted to touch upon was the regeneration itself. Now, they've been very tight-lipped, as you'd imagine. We have no idea how the regeneration is going to be triggered. Obviously, it tends to happen when the Doctor's been mortally wounded or injured, but there could be a whole host of circumstances as to why the Doctor will regenerate. We don't know how it's going to play out. We don't know if we tend to see the new Doctor in the last few seconds, so we might see Ncuti Gatwa. We might not. You know what I mean? Who knows in this era? They've pulled out a lot of unpredictable things this era, and it wouldn't surprise me if we end it without seeing the new Doctor. But if we do, that would also be really cool. I'd love to see how Ncuti Gatwa takes those first few steps as the Doctor, if you like. I think that would be really cool. And just how will she die? How will the 13th Doctor die? Who knows? And yeah, on the whole, those are most of my thoughts at the moment on the Power of the Doctor. As I say, if you're watching this before transmission, I'm recording this towards the end of September, start of October, so I'm only going off what's been publicly available. Like, we don't even have a transmission date as I'm recording this. But I just thought it'd be fun to discuss, like, will it work? Because again, a 90-minute special sounds like a long time, but you've got all these elements you're trying to work in. Everyone's got to have an adequate period of time. You've got so many things to tie up. I mean, the Doctor and Yaz. How's Dan gonna leave? You've got the old companions returning. You've got Unit returning. Old monsters returning. The Master's back. Do you see what I mean? That's a lot of stuff to fit into 90 minutes. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I just hope it doesn't come across as a cluttered mess. I'm all for a mess. If it's a fun mess, cool. But if it's cluttered, non-coherent, and all that sort of stuff, that will be a bit of a shame. Especially not just because it's Jodie's last one, but because this has been billed as, the episode that is partly celebrating the BBC's 100th anniversary. A whole host of stuff. But I have faith. I have faith in the power of the Doctor. But let me know what you think. Leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it. That would really help us out. And again, let me know in the comments just your thoughts, predictions, feelings about Power of the Doctor so far. Are you excited? Are you nervous? Are you not that bothered? Let me know in those comments. Also, subscribe to the channel if you're brand new. That would help us out too. I've been Adam Martyn from AMTV. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time. Thank you to our patrons for helping to support the show, and a special thank you to Macra, Hux Media, Ben Freeman, Ethan Carberry-Holt, Bruce Danton, the Broken Kitsumanoid, and Francine Salazar, our AMTV staff members.